Welcome. I'm Mary Eggert with the GlobalWaterWorks, with GlobalWaterWorks members for our regular collaboration. We're here to make change happen by bringing our ideas together, the technology, and the organizational best practices that we've formed. And we have the pleasure today of having Gary Wong with us, and he will share OSIsoft's strategies for managing data. I'm going to share my screen here to just go over a few different slides and our, oops, something, just a second.
There you go.
And I am actually going to talk through it because it looks like I'm having computer challenge here.
No, that's good. You're up.
Good. Okay. Great. So it's all about creating community for our One Water world. Reuse and water efficiency and smart water management with sensors all come together to make our water work. And today we have Gary Wong, as I said. He's the principal for the global water industry for OSIsoft. He is also chairman of SWAN Americas, and has a powerful presentation to share about the importance of having your data organized in order for us to manage water efficiently. Before we go off to his presentation, I just want to acknowledge other individuals who are helping our GlobalWaterWorks efforts. All of you are ambassadors if you're here online or sharing information about the community. And Frank Slavenik joined me in March of this year to develop the strategy for GlobalWaterWorks. And we now have a technology showcase and an opportunity to spread the word on who's making water work. We're partners with SWAN, and you'll see Shana Rambos there, who's helping today with administrative management. And we want to just acknowledge you all can dig in any day to look at the technologies that are proven, that are out there, that are useful for efficient water management and scientific innovation. And those members of the Technology Showcase often also lead our discussion groups with their case studies. And if you have a technology that you know everyone should know about, just refer them our way. And we're grateful for Lou sharing H2O Vortex, a very exciting technology we'll be discussing here in the future. Also, collaboration is so important across our One Water space. These are our partners who we have written commitments with, and we really value their efforts. I just want to acknowledge ACRE is what Elise helped found, a Climate Resilient Earth Initiative. TMA Blue Tech organizes the ocean folks as well as water technologists, and they're based in San Diego but span the globe. The water tower is now based in Gwinnett County, but it provides a digital representation as well as a physical place where you can go and see demonstrations of technology. The One Water Academy is introducing training for the future water workforce, and SWAN, of course, is the Smart Water Initiatives, which I mentioned Gary is leading here in the Americas. Our agenda today is to place a spotlight on the power of data. Gary will share that, and then we'll introduce discussion topics so that you can all dive in deeper with experts in a focused area and have those facilitated discussions now for 45 minutes because we have heard that you need a little bit more time to get to know each other, and Frank will go over a process for that, and we'll then recap to the large group, hopefully with findings on those groups, and continue networking via the chat. So it's actually an hour and a half for the session, an hour and 45 minutes if you want to hang out and network. But we're delighted to have you here. And I'm going to stop sharing and invite Gary to share to go over what's happening with the data core. And I'll just, while he sets up, I'll just mention that he was the most astounding presentation I heard in 2017 at SWAN London. And I thought, oh my goodness, this has happened across every other industry. He is bringing it to the water sector. And Gary, I'll let you tell them what it is. So thank you very much for being here.
Great, thanks, Mary. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me lead this, this month's collaboration session. So yes, I'm the principal for OSIsoft's global water industry. So I've been leading the water industry at OSIsoft for the last 14 years. And it's been a fantastic journey. As well, I'm the chairman of SWAN Americas, which you heard Mary talk about. So I think we can all agree that data is absolutely critical. We're here all to better and try to better and manage the water industry. And there's a lot of data that's being generated. And we're seeing more and more of this. So I'll go into some more of those details and why it's really important to be able to manage your data and actually take action from it. So just a bit about OSIsoft. We're a software company founded in 1980. So we're a 40-year-old company, and we specialize in real-time data management and operational intelligence. As you can see here, we have thousands of customers around the world. And today we're going to focus on water solely. And we're starting to see more and more IoT devices, the Internet of Things, sensors to measure water quality or to look at the condition of your assets and pumps and so forth. And that generates a lot of data. And they're from all different types of hardware manufacturers and vendors. And of course, that can become quite a challenge in order to manage all that data. So if you take a look at the water industry and some of our customers, and these are the things that they're using their data for, whether it's looking at condition-based maintenance of their assets to forecasting water demand, right? It's a wide range of things. And what's really interesting is this whole digital transformation you hear about is a journey. So you have to start somewhere. Our utilities today, for example, have a lot of data already that's being generated primarily from your SCADA systems or automation systems, right? But what we're starting to see more and more of now is a lot of data that's being generated from these sensors, these industrial Internet of Things, IoT or Internet of Things types devices. For example, that might measure water quality in real time, or you might have some smart meters, right? So those actually create more silos of data, which makes it even harder to manage. So I'm going to run through a report that we had commissioned through Z-Prime, and we surveyed about a couple hundred wastewater utilities, primarily in North America. And we asked a number of questions, and we'll take a look at some of those questions and the responses. So the first one was, what are some of your primary challenges at your water utility? And number one came up at aging infrastructure. There's CapEx and OpEx. You can see leaks and breaks, asset management, and data management. So I think we can start to see that data becomes a theme to all this. This is a typical scenario that you might see at a water utility. You're going to have, for example, I mentioned SCADA systems, different types of automation and controls. You might have meters, data loggers, manual data, of course, because we can't automate everything. And then you have a lot of business applications. So today we're going to hear about digital twins, for example, which is an application. Or you have GIS or asset management. And all these types of systems require data as an input, or there's an output to it. So you can see it's, I like to call this the whole spaghetti mess of things, where it can be quite a challenge and daunting task to try to put things together and make sense of it. So the PI system is what we have, and the PI system is completely out of the box, where we have the ability to talk to all these different types of hardware and software systems to start to make sense of that data. So we have these what we call interfaces, or connectors that can talk to over 400 different types of systems. And what's really important is once you have all the data and what we call and our customers call that one source of the truth, it's important to put context behind that. And I'll show you some examples from different utilities and what they're doing with the data and how they're using it. But if we take a look at data itself, we're starting to see more and more real-time data. And that's what we're talking about today, primarily. Real-time or time series data. You can see by 2025, in 5 years, roughly all the data in the world created, 25% of that is going to be real-time data. And of all that real-time data, half of it, roughly, is going to be from IoT type devices. And we're starting to see that already. So for example, in Swan and in today's call, you'll see organizations and companies that have more sensors that are out there, right? So that provides us with more data, which hopefully we'll be able to use that data to drive some actionable insights. So is IoT important in water? So when we ask these 200 utilities, you can see right off the bat, 79% said yes, the Internet of Things is important. It's a trend that they're going to look into. But at the same time, you'll see very few, roughly, companies, about a third, are already using some of these IoT sensors and devices. So we can see that it's a trend that's here to stay, and then more and more organizations are starting to, provide more sensors out there. And I'm sure we're going to hear more examples today, which is perfect for today's topic and the whole collaboration aspect of things. And then you ask the question, what are the benefits of IoT? So number one, 62% is operational efficiency. Analytics-based decision-making is number two, and then some about increased security and then increasing asset life and so forth. So you can see there's a number of different things, and it really depends on a utility's priority, right? At the end of the day, I think we all want to be resilient utilities and use the data that we have to help that. But in terms of the challenges of managing all this data, these are what the utility said. Number one, at 61%, was the ease of access to data. And I think that is so critical. It's about having that ease of access to data. Because sometimes we might have a question that we think of. I might want to know, for example, how many times the pH of my water went over 8.1 in the last 2 years. If I need to wait days or weeks for someone to try to help me get that answer, or I have to look into 5 different systems to try to come up with the answer there, it's lost, it's gone, right? So it's having that ease of instantaneous access to data. Number two, amount of data. So some people might think that there's just too much data. And we think that's not true. I think people see that or think that there's too much data because they can't easily manage it, right? But if you do manage it, you're not going to say you have too much data, right? And then of course, data silos. As you saw earlier, a lot of different systems. And what's starting to happen now is we're starting to see data being generated in these different silos at the edge, for example, right out in the field when you have new sensors, say you're monitoring vibration on a pump, right? You have your typical SCADA type data that what we call on premise, so like, for example, in your plants. And then we have more and more data that's being generated and it goes directly into the cloud. So now that creates even more of a difficult time in terms of managing those different data silos. And then when we take a look at how do utilities manage all their data and do they have it integrated, we can see that only a quarter, 25%, think that they're managing it well or very well. That leaves us with the remaining 75% that do it fairly well or not well at all, which is about 28%, as you can see here from the responses. So there's a lot of things that we can do to improve this. And, I talk about having data at the edge, on premise and in the cloud, and it's really being able to have that real-time data infrastructure to manage it across, regardless of where that data is being generated. So I think with that, I'll show a couple of examples in terms of what our customers are doing. The first one is Riverside Public Utilities, and they manage in Riverside, California, water, wastewater, and power for about 320,000 people. And right off the bat, you can see here, they've got the PI system as their data hub, and they're bringing in and managing data from 30 different systems. And they show about a dozen of those here. So anywhere from outage management to their water SCADA systems to looking at weather patterns and weather data, right? This is one of their outputs. This is one of their dashboards. It's completely real time, so you can see things update in real time. And if you were to click on, for example, the total water delivery, you'd be able to drill down and get all your trends and graphs like that in terms of how much water was delivered on a daily or an hourly basis. You got to understand, though, that where they started from was they started with having a couple people spend 4 hours a day to try to generate a dashboard, which was 24 hours old. So it was only a snapshot in time and nothing was being updated, right? It's a snapshot in time. And it was spending them, 2 people, 4 hours a day to just try to generate that dashboard. Compared to what you see now is completely real time. They were basically looking at their SCADA screens and manually copying down some of the data, transposing that into a spreadsheets and different databases to try to generate that snapshot. Right now, after about 2 years now, they've been saving about $820,000 a year on their OPEX costs, and that's primarily looking at compliance reporting, so that's all completely in real time and automated. They're reducing their energy costs as well, and so forth. So a huge transformation and journey for them. Earlier, just before our call, we heard about, algae and algal blooms, and this is a fantastic example from the city of Salem. So we all know, and we're starting to see more and more algal blooms. It's just the temperature of our water is starting to increase. And at the city of Salem, they use Detroit Lake as their main water source. And a couple of years ago, they had the issue of algae blooms that actually created cyanotoxins. And that's what's really dangerous, right? Is if this algae creates cyanotoxins, it's dangerous to us and, for example, pets and stuff like that if they go in the water. So they actually had a situation where some cyanotoxins got into the source for their drinking water, as you see here. And so what they decided to do was act on this and say, how can we predict if algal blooms are going to happen? And then 2, if those blooms are going to cause cyanotoxins. So they basically worked with Oregon State University and the prediction lab to use neural networks based on all this data that they're generating to figure out if these events are going to happen. So here's a snapshot of one of their pontoons that are out on the lake, and it's measuring different data from temperature, wind, looking at turbidity and other things within the water. And they're also bringing in the weather forecasts and so forth, and they get all this data together, send it to this neural network up in the cloud. And from there, they predict, as you can see here, what the odds are in terms of if an algal bloom is going to occur, and then the toxins and also the parts per billion of those toxins if they were to occur. The fantastic thing about this is it's very, very accurate, and they're able, and what you see here is basically a screenshot of their website. So this is posted and generated for the public, and it's public consumption. And this is what we've seen is with a lot of leading utilities is they're very proactive and there's a lot of outreach. And that's what we want, right? We want to be proactive as much as possible. And so this allows people to decide if they can go swimming, if it's safe and so forth. And of course they can see this all in real time. And this forecasts out 2 weeks in advance, and I think at the latest now, you can see it goes up. They're going to go have monthly forecasts as well. So that's pretty amazing in terms of, I think they're bringing in 8 different sources of data altogether, and then creating these forecasts, which have been very accurate and very important for their constituents in the area. This example here is the Great Lakes Water Authority. They're in Detroit, and this is something that we as utilities come across a lot, is looking at pump optimization. So we have a lot of pumps, and you can see here they're showing a screen of multiple pumps, about 6 of them, And they're figuring out the strategy in terms of which pumps to turn on and when, and how to run those pumps. It's really interesting here where there, as you can see, they're bringing a lot of different types of data from flows to pressures, looking at pump efficiencies. So what they're measuring is expected pump efficiencies, and they have these demand curves from these pumps of what the expected performance are of these pumps. And they start to deviate, look at notifications and so forth. And from also some of the forecasts, knowing how much water is demanded, they can figure out how many pumps to run and which ones and so forth. And it's all about efficiency of those pumps and reducing their energy costs, and also ensuring that those pumps are maintained properly. Because too often we see utilities just using schedule-based maintenance. So every 6 months, you might run out there and service these pumps. In fact, they might have not needed servicing for a year, or some of those pumps needed servicing 2 months ago, right? So if you take a look at some of these results from Great Lakes Water Authority, we can see that they're saving approximately 6% on their energy costs, which is fantastic. And, you know, because we hear a lot about the whole energy water nexus, and that's the thing is, you know, we as utilities have the ability to basically store energy, right? And we can help also the power utilities shave off those peak demand curves, right? Those peaks. So in this case here, they're saving 6% on their energy costs on just their pumps and at their pumping stations. And then the last example I want to go through, because it is hurricane season right now on the East Coast. This happens to be Hampton Roads Sanitation District in Virginia. And you can see on this display here that they're bringing in a lot of data, not only pressures and flows from their various different pumping stations and stuff, but they're also bringing in weather forecasts and radar data that you see here. And they're predicting and looking at basically how the hurricanes are going to affect them. It's really interesting because as a water utility, they're doing this, and they're, you know, using this to mitigate risk and decide where to, you know, push the water and where to send crews and so forth in advance of these storms. But they had a fantastic story earlier this year where they shared they're monitoring all the data in their data centers. So you might think, okay, what are they doing there? Well, the data center is a part of their facilities, and the data center needs to be up and running all the time. And one of the things that they monitor is, for example, how much cooling is required in there and to maintain those data centers at a certain temperature. One of the situations they had was 2 days before a hurricane was going to come in, the person in charge, she actually got a notification on her mobile phone. She was at dinner, and it said the temperature has increased 2 degrees Fahrenheit. They looked into it right away, all remotely on her phone, and found that part of the cooling system, there was an outage with one of the sensors and controllers. So they actually sent someone out there. They looked into it, fixed it all. Within 90 minutes, everything was back up and running. You can imagine if you didn't have that type of monitoring available, and it's 2 days before this hurricane that's going to come in, and if your data center went down, right? So again, let me stress that, you know, the whole digital transformation, it's a journey. But what we're starting to see more and more of is a lot more monitoring capabilities. So not necessarily control, but data that's being generated for monitoring from all these different IoT type devices. And it's absolutely critical to see what you see here, for example, where you have data in context, right? Where it's starting to make sense, not only to us as people to use the data, but to also other systems. And with that, I think I'll kind of end the discussion here. And I don't know if we have time for questions, Mary, or how you wanted to.
We did have a few questions, and I'll
Sure.
just do them quickly, and then we'll have Gary respond after in the breakout group, if you can stick around. So the accuracy of these forecasts for the hurricanes, any comments on that?
Yeah, they really look at because they have forced mains, they can't build up the pressure too much, and the tides also play a major role. And when you get huge storms coming in, there's a lot of rain that comes through. So they basically look at one as, where is the intensity of the rainfall? Where might this hurricane go through? Which means, where do they have to shore up? Where do they have to send people? Where do they have to make sure that power is available? Because if power goes down, you can imagine that you're not going to have your pumps online, right?
Right.
So they're really looking at where they can, mitigate some of the risk.
Yeah, and that's from A.R. El-Khattabi with the EPA, who's with us today, OSIsoft fellow with the EPA. So thanks for joining us, A.R. And also, I think that there was a question on industry applications, and that's sort of where you came from, Gary, right? OSIsoft. Could you speak to just how you evolved and the progression in water? What's made the uptake suddenly,
Right.
impactful?
Yeah. So at OSIsoft and with our PI system, we play across all those different industries, as you saw. But water has always been a laggard. And, I've been in the water business for just over 20 years. And we're always a laggard, but, what's starting to happen now is there's a lot more, let's call those cheap sensors that are available. IoT type devices and sensors that are now becoming much more pervasive. And we don't need to control everything, but if we can monitor what's happening out in the field, out in some of these remote locations, then we can see exactly what's happening. And then from there, we can drive the necessary actions, right, to mitigate risk or to, just be much more proactive. And really, unfortunately, this whole pandemic with COVID-19 has actually really shone the light in terms of our capability as an industry and as utilities to be able to monitor remotely, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, what we're starting to see is if you have the ability, for example, like Hampton Roads, to be able to sit at home and be able to monitor exactly what's happening, that's very different than having to send people in and risking their lives going to site or going out to these places to be able to see what's happening physically. It's the same thing with, for example, wildfires in California, where if you have the sensors out there to know and ensure that you have the necessary pressure and water for firefighters to fight the fires, as opposed to sending someone out there to physically check on hydrants, right? So this is what we're starting to see where, sometimes organizations might say, no, you can't have access to the data, or you can't have remote access or capability. That's completely flipped upside down because of COVID, really. And we're starting to see a huge uptake. And I think it's really important for our industry.
It is. And Gary, that's why we're so thrilled that you could be here today and share your capabilities. And Gary will be joining the Quality Water Management Group with Jim Fisher. And that brings us to the breakout discussions, which I think people really relish because it's our time to hear from each other, to get to know each other, and to go deeper on topics that are really important to the industry. So I'd like to have the experts just share briefly what they'll be discussing. We'll talk through, if you could, in this order listed here. So off-grid water, Frank, if you could briefly share what you'll be covering in your breakout.
So we're going to be talking about a number of things off-grid plus cut-off water supplies. So not only people that are off the grid, but people that are challenged, even in cities in the United States, challenged to get clean water for hygiene and for drinking.
Yeah, great technology solutions I know you're looking at. So that's wonderful. And compliance, I said water quality. Jim Fisher, you are here. You've been guiding all those California experts. What will you be sharing today?
Yeah, well, it's great. It was great to have a chance to come in here. I'm new to all this and fresh out of the government sector. So just basically sharing what we're doing with our company. And Rick had some good conversations with Rick already, and sharing some information about what we can do to help people better determine where their compliance shortfalls are and find people that need their help. I mean, I see that as a big gap, and certainly in the work I did before, where people are out there kind of running maybe boots on the ground or not so sophisticated, like Gary said earlier. You know, there's really need more data, need more help to see where their compliance is off. So
yeah, Jim was just celebrated for his retirement by a load of California water officials who said how much he has helped them because they put a fine of $10 a gallon for overflows there. So you were kind enough to point out technologies that could alleviate that sort of burden. Very kind.
yeah, I think it's a huge area, huge opportunity.
Yeah, great. We agree. Investment, John or Elise? Let me make one. Let's say John, because Elise did it last time.
Everybody, John Robinson, Mazarine Ventures. We're technology investors in early stage companies that are focused on water and wastewater. We have a particularly strong focus on data science innovations, everything from sensors and IoT, data structuring, data validation, and then what everybody wants to talk about, AI and machine learning. And in our discussion group, we're going to talk about, from an investor perspective, where the smart money is in all this in the next 5 years. Happy to share some of our thesis and our notes on where we're going to be placing some bets.
Yeah, and I know Elise also has that private-public partnership background, so she'll add to that. And thank you, guys. That'll be fun. Careers, Donna.
Yeah, I need a job, by the way.
Maybe Stephanie, if you're, Ed, you can join that group then.
That's great. California is where it's at.
It is, right. But you're in Florida, so.
Yeah, but I mean, I did all that stuff with BOMA and Amgen and Irvine Ranch. I just want to go back.
And you're funny, but this isn't your topic. So
I know. You're right.
So we're going to come back if they want. We are postponing efficient water until December. So let's look at real-time stormwater. Linda Reed.
Good morning. I will be sharing some IoT solutions for stormwater management that I'm familiar with, that I just heard about. Unfortunately, the person who's connected with the company couldn't join us today. But really, I'd like to use our session to find out about needs. Anybody who is in the stormwater industry, tell us. Let's talk about what isn't there yet and what needs to be there.
Yeah, and you're based right there in Milwaukee with all your green infrastructure expertise. So it'll be an awesome discussion for anyone who joins, and otherwise pile on to the compliance stormwater group. I think they are doing something similar. And then a new water standard. We're talking about a potential LEED equivalent for water. So Sandra, could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation today to talk about a water certification program that I put together with the help of a lot of people in the water industry, and I just want to keep the discussion going.
Yeah, that is a very compelling thought of having every city certified with certain parameters so we know how efficient and how much access we have to water. And last but not least, digital twin. I don't know if Gigi could join us. If she's not there, I'll provide this introduction. Actually, Wagner, tell us that you have the virtual reality tour. So Wagner, could you share?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dude. What will we be talking about in the digital twin breakout?
Wow, a lot of advanced and we are exploring the virtual reality. Let me just call my friends in Brazil, yeah.
Yeah, and Richard. Yes, Richard will also be joining you.
1 minute, please.
Okay, if you need to grab them. But we'll break out, we'll move to the group in a second. So you can grab your friends on the phone, and we are going to adjourn into groups. But before we do that, I just want to turn it over to Frank, an expert trainer and facilitator on guidelines for great group participation.
So pretty simple. It's the objective of the group is to get everybody participating. So start off with everybody introducing themselves, open with the discussion topics, brief background. You know, the facilitator should be doing probably the least amount of talking within the group. Ask open-ended questions, ask follow-up questions to comments, challenge some comments to get deeper into that, into the subject that's brought by them, and then make sure you stay on your topic and make sure as a facilitator that you don't take over.
Yeah, or as a participant, either one. We're all
or as a participant, right?
Community.
The facilitator has to guide that.
Yeah. So, so just again, we will resume. We'll provide a 5-minute notice prior to returning to the groups at 10 after the hour. So you do have time for everyone to do introductions and to have a great collaboration and a presentation by your expert. What I wanted you to be aware of, just in case you don't get to come back, is that key to being effective in our collaboration community is to complete your profile so people know who you are. Connect with your tribe, join some of these groups, use the bulletin board. There's a water bulletin board where you can post any requests, and tap a plus to add peers so that you can be acknowledged as an ambassador. You are already ambassadors just showing up here, and make sure you let us know how we can grow the community together. So any questions, thoughts, or comments before we adjourn?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Release us, Shayna, please. Thank you.
Hopefully no one gets dizzy here. Bear with us.
Right. Great picture.